The day my son was born was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it was the day my parents detonated a bomb in the middle of it and walked away from the wreckage. They left me all alone in a cold, sterile hospital room with my newborn baby in my arms. For 10 solid years, their absence was a deafening roar in what should have been a quiet life. A decade of pure, unbroken silence. Then last week, my phone rang, an unknown number that felt like a ghost rattling my door.
It was them.
And after 10 years of treating me like a stranger, they had the nerve to ask for a favor, a shocking, unbelievable favor that centered on the very same grandchild they had thrown away like a piece of trash. Before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification to get more stories when posted. Before my son, Leo, came along, my relationship with my parents was functional, I suppose, in the way a machine is functional. It performs its duties, it follows a schedule, but it has no heart. On the surface, we were a portrait of a normal family. We had the Sunday dinners, the meticulously planned holidays, the annual family photos where we all smiled as if we meant it. But underneath that glossy finish, their love was never a warm blanket. It was a scorecard. It was a currency I had to earn, and the exchange rate was always just out of reach. Their approval was a carrot dangled on a stick, tied to my grades, my career choices, and eventually, the man I chose to love. Their love had conditions, bylaws, and a long list of fine print I could never quite satisfy. When I sat them down in their beige living room and told them I was pregnant, the reaction wasn't the explosion of joy I had naively dreamed of. It was a frost. A quiet, creeping frost that chilled the entire room. My partner at the time, a kind and gentle man, wasn't a doctor or a lawyer. He didn't fit into the blueprint they had designed for my life, and they made that painfully clear, not with yelling, but with the icy precision of their disappointment. "Well, Anna," my mother had said, inspecting a loose thread on a throw pillow, "I hope you know what you're doing." My father just stared out the window, as if watching a future he wanted for me drive away. Still, a foolish part of me, the part that still believed in fairy tales, held on to hope. I thought a grandchild would be the great equalizer. A baby, so pure and innocent, would surely melt the polar ice caps of their hearts. His love would be a force of nature they couldn't possibly judge or critique. I was so naive. The day I went into labor, they actually showed up. It felt like a flicker of that hope being rewarded. But the atmosphere in the hospital room was all wrong. It wasn't buzzing with anticipation. It was thick with a heavy, suffocating tension. My mom paced the floor like a caged animal, her lips pressed into a thin, white line of disapproval. My dad, he just kept checking his watch, as if my labor was an inconvenient appointment he had to get through. The rhythmic ticking felt like a countdown, but I didn't know what it was counting down to. A few hours after Leo was born, perfect and pink and screaming with the strength of a tiny hurricane, a nurse came in to check my vitals. My parents stood up in unison. "We're just popping down to the cafeteria to get a coffee," my mother announced to the room. I remember smiling, a tired, bone-deep happy smile, and telling them not to be too long. I wanted them to hold him again. I wanted to see them finally look at him with love. They never came back. I waited. An hour crawled by, each minute stretching into an eternity. My partner had stepped out to call his own overjoyed family, so it was just me, the humming machines, and my son. The silence in that sterile, white room started to get loud, buzzing in my ears. I pictured them stuck in a long line, or maybe they'd run into someone they knew. I made excuses for them in my head, building a flimsy dam against the flood of fear that was starting to rise. Then a second hour passed. The dam began to crack. The pure, unadulterated joy I'd felt just a couple of hours before started to curdle into a cold, hard knot of dread in the pit of my stomach. I called my mom's phone. It rang once, then went to the chilly, impersonal world of voicemail. I called my dad. The exact same thing. Panic, real and sharp, began to claw its way at my throat. I buzzed the nurse, and my voice trembled when I asked if she'd seen my parents. She looked at me, and her professional mask slipped for just a second. She gave me this look of profound, heartbreaking pity, and gently shook her head. And that look, more than the unanswered calls, was the final confirmation. It was the nail in the coffin. In that moment, under those harsh fluorescent lights, with my tiny, helpless son sleeping in a plastic box beside me, the floor of my world didn't just crack, it fell away completely, leaving me in a free fall with my newborn son in my arms. They were gone. They had left. They had abandoned me on the single most vulnerable day of my life. The pain was an ocean, vast and dark and deep. It wasn't just disappointment. It was a fundamental betrayal, a severing of something I thought was unbreakable. It hollowed me out, leaving behind an echoing, empty cavern where a daughter's love used to be. Honestly, those first few years are a chaotic collage of memories, a blur of exhaustion and survival. My relationship with Leo's dad, which had already been straining under the weight of my parents' disapproval, eventually shattered under the pressure of my trauma. My pain was a ghost in our house, a third person in our relationship that he couldn't see, but I could never escape. He wanted to fix a broken thing, and I didn't even have the instruction manual. Soon enough, it was just me and my boy against the world. I became a warrior fueled by caffeine and a ferocious, primal love for my son. I worked 2 jobs, a waitress by day and a data entry clerk by night. There were nights I'd come home smelling of grease and stale coffee, so tired I could barely stand, and I'd just collapse onto the bathroom floor and cry until I had nothing left, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of the loneliness. I mourned the family I thought I had. Grieving people who are still alive is a special kind of hell. It's like walking around with a phantom limb. I'd constantly feel the ache for a family that was no longer there, a mother I couldn't call, a father who wasn't there to offer advice. Their absence was a ghost that haunted my every step. I saw them everywhere. In every doting grandmother at the park, in every proud grandfather lifting a toddler onto his shoulders. Each sighting was a fresh twist of the knife. But you can only stay on the floor for so long. Slowly, painfully, piece by piece, I started to build a real life for us, a fortress of our own making. I enrolled in an online degree program, my textbooks stained with coffee and baby formula, my essays written in the dead of night while the whole world slept. I earned that degree, and it led to a better job, one that didn't leave me smelling like a diner. Then I got a promotion and another. We moved out of our tiny, cramped apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbors who always fought, and into a small house with a little backyard, big enough for a swing set. And more importantly, I found my own family, not one of blood, but of choice. A crew of amazing, loyal friends who became the aunts and uncles to my son. My friend. And more importantly, I found my own family, not one of blood, but of choice. A crew of amazing, loyal friends who became the aunts and uncles to my son. My friend Sarah, who showed up with a week's worth of soup when Leo and I both had the flu, became Aunt Sarah. My buddy Mark, who patiently taught Leo how to ride a bike, holding the seat long after I had given up, became Uncle Mark. They were there for the fevers, the scraped knees, the tearful toddler meltdowns, and the triumphant school plays. They filled the empty seats at birthday parties. They were the people my parents should have been, the pillars I could actually lean on. And Leo? He thrived. He blossomed into this incredible kid, funny, bright, and endlessly curious, with a heart twice the size of his body. His world is full of love, laughter, and the unwavering stability I fought tooth and nail to give him. He has no idea about the gaping hole my parents blew in my life, the rubble I had to climb out of. I made sure of that. His childhood would not be defined by their absence. We're a team, him and me. The scared, broken girl in that hospital room is long gone. In her place stands a mother, a provider, a survivor. I built a fortress of peace and happiness around me and my son, and I am the fierce guardian at its gate. The silence from my parents continued, year after year, and with every passing year, the wound turned into a scar. And a scar isn't a symbol of weakness. It's proof that you were wounded and you healed. My scar was a roadmap of survival, a testament etched into my soul that I was stronger than what had tried to break me. If you've ever had to find your own strength after being let down by the people who were supposed to be there for you, and you appreciate stories about resilience, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly means the world. Then, 10 days ago, the phone call. An unknown number on a Tuesday afternoon. My first instinct was to ignore it, to let it go to voicemail, like any other spam call. But some strange, deep-down premonition made me slide my finger across the screen. Hello. There was a hesitation, a crackle of static, and then a voice, thin and brittle like old paper, a voice I hadn't heard in a decade. Is this Anna? It was my mother. My blood didn't just run cold. It froze solid in my veins. The air left my lungs in a sudden whoosh. 10 years of absolute, soul-crushing silence. And just like that, she was on my phone, her voice a ghost from a past I had buried. She sounded older, weaker, stripped of the authority she used to carry. She told me my father was sick. Very sick. His kidneys were failing. He'd been on dialysis for years, a grueling process that was stealing his life piece by piece. He'd been on the transplant list for over a year with no matches in sight. Time, she said, was running out. She started to cry then, a broken, desperate sound that was completely alien to me. She went on about how they had nowhere else to turn, how they were at the end of their rope. That I just listened, my hand gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles were white. The room around me faded away. A tiny part of me, the forgotten little girl who just wanted her mom and dad to be proud of her, felt a pathetic pang of sympathy. But the woman I am now, the mother who clawed her way out of the abyss they left me in, she stood guard. It was like two armies clashing inside my ribcage, the ghost of the daughter she'd abandoned and the lioness I had become. I stayed silent, waiting. This wasn't a call to apologize. This was a call with a purpose. And then she said it, the real reason for the call. Anna, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, desperate whisper. We need your help. The doctors said family members are the best hope. We need you to get tested, to see if you're a match. I closed my eyes. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it was like a physical blow. It knocked the wind out of me. To be abandoned, to be treated as if I had ceased to exist, and then for them to reappear a decade later, not with an apology, not with remorse, but with a demand for a piece of my body. It was breathtaking. But oh, it got so much worse. And if you're not, she choked out, the words catching in her throat on a sob, we were hoping you'd let us test Leo. The world stopped. The buzzing in my ears was a roar. The floor tilted beneath my feet. Test Leo. My son. Their grandchild, who they have never met, never sent a birthday card to, never asked about a single time. They wanted to see if my 10-year-old child was a compatible organ donor for the man who walked out on him before he was even a day old. They weren't just asking for a kidney. They were looking at my beautiful, vibrant child as if he were a spare parts department for the family that threw him away. Something inside me, some tightly coiled spring of a decade's worth of repressed rage, just snapped. The calm, controlled woman I'd worked so hard to become vanished, incinerated by a white-hot fury. No, I said. My voice was dangerously quiet, colder than the silence they had given me for 10 years.
What?
Anna, please, you don't understand. He's dying. No, I said again, my voice rising, gaining a strength I didn't know I possessed. The answer is no. You will not come near my son. You will not test him. You will not even speak his name. He is not a spare part. He is not a solution to a problem you created. He is my son, and your rights to him, to anything concerning him, were forfeited a decade ago in a hospital cafeteria. And then the dam broke. 10 years of pain, of loneliness, of holidays spent pretending I wasn't heartbroken, of seeing his milestones alone. It all came pouring out of me in a torrent of fury. You missed his first steps, but you want him to walk into a hospital for you? You never heard his first word, but you want to hear that he's a match? You never bought him a single birthday gift, never mind attended a single party, but now you want the gift of his very health, his very organ? The nerve. The absolute, breathtaking nerve of you both. You don't get to just disappear from my life and then reappear when you need a kidney. I seethed, my voice shaking with rage. You gave up the right to ask me for anything the second you walked out of that hospital and left me alone with my newborn baby. You are not his grandparents. You are strangers. You are genetic information on a piece of paper, and that is all you will ever be to him. And you will stay that way. She was sobbing on the other end now, a mess of pleas and excuses about how they were scared, how they made a mistake. But her words were meaningless. Your fear doesn't give you a right to my child's body, I spat back. Your mistake doesn't cost him a piece of his. Do not call me again. Our relationship, whatever hollowed-out shell was left of it, is over. For good. I hung up the phone. My hands were trembling. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but for the first time in 10 years, I felt a profound, incredible sense of release. I felt free. I wasn't that scared girl anymore. I was a lioness protecting her cub, and my roar had finally been heard. That night, I went into Leo's room and just watched him sleep, his face peaceful in the soft glow of his nightlight, completely unaware of the storm that had just broken. I built this life for him, this sanctuary. My parents' selfishness was a hurricane raging outside our walls, but it couldn't touch us in here. I made my choice, and it wasn't even a choice. It was an instinct. My priority is, and always will be, the child they left behind. They didn't just abandon me that day in the hospital. They abandoned him. For that, there is no forgiveness. There is no second chance. My parents were the architects of my deepest wound, but in doing so, they forced me to become the architect of my own salvation. The fortress I built around my son isn't made of stone and mortar. It's built from every late night I worked, every bedtime story I read, every tear I wiped away, and every single promise I kept. It's a fortress of love, and it is impenetrable. Family dynamics are so complicated, and a situation like this brings up so many questions about what we owe each other and what can be forgiven. What would you have done in my shoes? I'd really like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more stories, please subscribe to the channel, share, and like.